Good morning, everyone. Today is October the 11th, 2022. We're here for a Public Service Commission work group meeting. It's PC54, which is a work group on the Montgomery County Community Choice Pilot Program. My name is Jennifer Grace. I'm tasked with leading this work group. I wanted to first touch base with any party really, but more specifically Montgomery County or staff to see if anyone wanted to kind of give an update on our off-week meeting that we had last week, a review of it for anyone who wasn't here, or if you wanted to say if there's any update based on your own internal meetings after that last meeting.
This is Lisa Brennan, Judge. I can certainly say a couple things and then I'll open it up to my folks to see if they have anything to add to Stan and Michael. First of all, we appreciate everyone who attended. I think the presentation was really helpful. It seemed to me like there was some good feedback on that. And I just wanted to say if there's more information you think there's needed, please let us know. Because it seemed like that helped get us to a little different place of understanding, like what the options are and what CCAs look like.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone from staff?
This is Phil from staff. So we have, I think, maybe a couple ideas about what we should do next, and I think we wanted to talk a little bit about the timeline of what we need to have completed by when. I know that we have a firm date. I think we're talking about trying to have the report and the rules ready to go to the commission in January. Is that kind of where you stand as well?
Yes.
So we don't, I don't know if we have a firm date. We say in January. Is that that's probably like the middle of January somewhere? I don't know that we have ever fixed on a specific date.
We have not. We still have some regs that need writing and some issues that need deciding.
Right. So just, I guess we don't have to do it right now, but at some point today, I thought it might be helpful to sort of get everybody on the same page in terms of like what sort of deliverables we're going to need. What happens around like the end of the year? I mean, it's typically fairly busy with lots of filings that folks have to make for various reasons and lots of other proceedings. So just wanted to take into account like how much time we have left this month, November and December, and then maybe get an idea as to where in January we will be looking to produce the final work product, just to sort of nail down a little tighter what our remaining time looks like.
I'm happy to hear your ideas now for a timeline, Bill.
Okay, so I think we what we'll need to do probably between now and the next meeting is actually pull out the chart we had put together with all of the sections of the regulations we have on it, and some homework to do on that is going to be number one, figuring out what else needs to be written that isn't yet put down in the various drafts that we've got out there, and then I know we looked at a couple of the sections and know we needed to move some things around. That we're, making sure we're sort of putting things in the appropriate sections. I think we want to try to get that dealt with by the next meeting, to have more or less the drafts figured out, and then once we see what else needs to get essentially, produced. Like I think there's a couple of areas where we know we're supposed to cover something, but it hasn't been written up yet, so. And we need to get a schedule for getting that in. But I kind of think we need to have everything in some sort of a draft form within the next 5 weeks, probably, in order to have time in, say, November to sort of, discuss anything further. And then one of the other things we're going to need to do is identify the areas where there is agreement, and then maybe sort of try to lock those down a little bit. And then the areas where I think there's a couple places where we know there's disagreements about the approach that folks want to use. We have probably going to need at least two sets of regulations to sort that out. So I think we'll need to sort of identify all of those and just get a nice clear roadmap as to what work needs to be done. If we're going to have different approaches, we may be able to make the consideration of those approaches easier for the commission if we sort of work on the areas where we disagree and make sure we're in agreement about the disagreement in terms of, there's no ambiguity as to like what the positions are. I think that's sort of our process, that we wouldn't wait until like everything's drafted up to do that, but probably like November, that's probably the time frame where we'd be sort of taking the drafts that we hopefully have in the next little over a month and sort of refining them and sort of solidifying them into what we're going to need to present to the commission. That hopefully gives us enough time to do the rest of the editing and whatever commenting on those sections needs to be done, so that we're somewhere probably not the first, maybe not even the second week after the holiday, but somewhere in the third or fourth week after the holiday, we've got everything locked down.
So the schedule I have in my head tracks that, finishing up regs in October and by mid-November, and then mid-November and December working on the report. I have notes. The report's by no way final, but I have notes which I'll then share with everyone. And I have regulations that have been drafted by parties for strawmen, kind of organized by subject matter. But if more things will be teased out as we go over things in specific. So roughly my schedule tracks with yours, Phil.
Oh, okay. We should probably write that down and put it out there so everybody can kind of see it and get a feel for it. That I think will help to focus the resources we need to get to stay on that schedule.
During the off week meeting last week, I asked staff and Montgomery County to think about compromise positions regarding really just generally regarding commission oversight. And I wanted to find out from staff and Montgomery County if you all had met internally on that and if there's been any movement.
I was waiting for the county to say something. Lisa, do you guys have any comments on that?
We've certainly continued to talk about, we talk about CCA frequently internally. If not daily, it's definitely almost daily. I don't know that I would call it a compromise position. I think we've solidified. Stan, I don't know if you want to talk about this additionally, but we've definitely talked about what it is that we think we need to create a successful CCA for Montgomery County.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly share a statement that we've put together that expresses our views on level of the issue we've been talking about, what level of oversight there is of the county's procurement activity. And I think that's been consistent. We've been consistent in those statements all along. I don't think that's shifted just because, again, to do something other than that would not allow us to be to create a a competitive CCA that meets the county's objectives, which is the statement we've been pretty consistent about.
Dan, I don't know if you can comment on this or not, because I think we sort of asked this question last week, but I don't know if you had an answer at that point. But yeah, so we it was helpful to have the presentation of the different types of procurement that's being used by CCAs, and I think it for I don't know if we were going to summarize this today as part of the discussion for the folks that weren't on that call, but there were like 3 different approaches that were presented. There were 2 of those that I think I've had some need to understand, like how that would work and how that would essentially develop into like certainty as to what pricing looked like and whether or not we'd be able to evaluate those procurement approaches. The one sort of, I think it's called the single procurement approach, seemed to be a little sort of simpler in terms of being able to evaluate for its, the competitiveness of its bid and the suitability of it to lay out more of a fixed price, so we could kind of see the impact on the rest of SOS. But I'm not sorry if I'm long-winded on that, but does the county have, in any further discussions you've had, do you have a sense of like when you would be selecting an approach, if it's one of those 3 or if it's something else? And are you going to share that with the work group when it happens, or as it goes into development?
I guess what I would say in response to that, Phil, is that we believe the regulations should be written such that the county could pursue any one of those options provided.
And let me just add to that. I thought we made clear, but I guess perhaps we didn't. The idea is that the county doesn't have to select one choice. It may start out, we'll call it an evolution. The county may start out simpler with fewer procurements, but as the pilot progresses, this is a 7-year pilot, as the pilot progresses, to have the ability to do the multiple procurement options, or even, the third option, that gives us the flexibility to really put together the kind of a CCA that the county thinks will meet its objectives. So we haven't talked about picking one option, Phil. We've talked about an evolution. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be one thing and one thing from beginning to end.
And under all those options, our view has been consistent that the commission approves an aggregation plan which lays out the methods that the county may use to procure electricity, but doesn't specify a particular procurement option or when it would happen, and that the procurement activity of the county is not subject to commission pre-approval or approval after the fact. Even it certainly would be reviewed. Information we provide on the results of the procurement, but there would be no involvement of the commission in approving individual procurements under whatever option the county would choose. And again, that's been a pretty consistent position. And Judge Grace, I understand the desire to compromise, and I think there are many things we can and have compromised on, can continue to compromise on, but that is a sort of a line in the sand kind of thing, because that's so fundamental to the operating principles of the CCA that we're not able to compromise on that view.
If I could, and I appreciate that answer. I think we understand that the county, would like to have all options open to it, and that's entirely reasonable. I don't think anyone's trying to limit what the county can do, or certainly, staff's not suggesting that. what I was sort of getting at is, and maybe this is a bad assumption, but I was sort of assuming that, just thinking about the transition in October of 24, there would be sort of one approach being used there to provide the energy you're going to, be purchasing, or your customers will be purchasing on that date. So is it not a good assumption, or is it a good assumption to kind of figure that, whatever approach, these were your models, so I'm maybe tell us also this is an okay assumption that your internal thinking is that your approach will be one of these three approaches, and if that's not good, then maybe please let us know what the others would be. But narrowing the focus to like what's going to happen in October 24 at the transition, when do you think we would know about your approach to procurement for that period? And is it something where we could think that would be maybe the first year's approach, or do you expect to maybe be changing that more frequently in that first year at least than one year sort of approach to it?
Yeah, I don't think we could say that when we would know what the approach will be or how it might change through the years. That's again,
for the first time though, you must have some internal plan as to when you're going to conduct it, and thus you would probably know at some period in advance like what approach you're going to use for that, right? I mean, I think you talked about having your rates fixed and ready to roll by like June of 24. Is that?
Well, we certainly have to have our rates fixed so that we can send the opt-out notice, whether that's June or, assuming an October 1 start date. But again, I don't see the regulations in any way affecting or dictating what we can or can't do, or why what we can or can't do would affect what the regulations say. We view the regulations would say, give us an aggregation plan. Again, we've laid this out. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I don't think that our approach that would be used would be something that would be, to know that would be necessary to approve the aggregation. So I'm unclear about, and again, I think this is the differing view you have, or staff has. Don't mean to call it individuals, that staff seems to have about the commission's oversight and ability to say, yes, that procurement's good, go forward with it. Yes, that price that you ultimately end up with is good, we agree with it. We don't view the commission as having that role.
Okay, yeah, and I understand that. I'm not trying to go back down that road, and I'm not asking you to change that approach if that's what you guys do. Let me just, so the other sort of elephant in the room, so to speak, is SOS and how the SOS procurement, and I'm trying to sort of keep that in mind, and I don't know to the extent that having a more clear knowledge of what your procurement approach is going to be impacts SOS, but that is the other thing that does have some sort of predetermined events that occur each year on a fixed cycle that are necessary to establish the certainty required. And I think part of understanding how the county's procurement process is going to work provides some insight into that. So we don't know, for example, what the pricing for the county approach is going to, how that's going to be determined, and how it's going to, where it will be ultimately. We don't know that until after April of 24. I don't know what that means for the purpose of managing the procurement process for any Montgomery County residents or small businesses that remain on standard offer service, and it probably has some implications for SOS to the extent that SOS is purchased for both the remainder of Montgomery County and for Prince George's County for PEPCO, and for the other counties for the other ones. It's obviously the biggest problem in PEPCO service territory, and probably still a little bit of a concern in Potomac Edison. So that's kind of I think we're trying to understand if you were to proceed in the manner that you've proposed, where all options are open, and then ultimately the commission would not have anything to say about the prices that would be in effect. And I think what you're saying is also when we would know about the prices. I would like to make sure that the SOS issues about certainty in that procurement process are not left unresolved as part of this as well. Because I think it's important to make sure that that this process, which really sort of imposes some burdens on the SOS because that there are no restrictions been going back and forth between SOS and the CCA. I think that's kind of and I don't know that that's something can be altered, but that is where the actions of the CCA and the process of getting it set up and transitioning, not only at the beginning, but on a continuous basis going forward. That's where those are sort of linked in a way that the CCA impacts SOS. I think what we were trying to do with establishing certainty on the approach was to try to make sure we understand what that impact's going to be and sort of mitigate any downsides if there are any.
So I'm sorry, Phil, can we unpack that a little bit?
Yeah.
Because, the county has already agreed, like months ago, to postpone the start of the CCA enrollment until October 2024. So that was a decision made early on, basically to make sure that we could get through the SOS, the PIP process. And we did that. And I think that was, so we agreed to that, and that's been done. And, we've tried to make it clear that our goal is to start in October 2024, but we have to know, that it's going to work. So I guess I'm not sure which option we would pick as far as the things that were presented last week I guess I'm not sure what there's that difference. I understand that whether we start on October 1st, 2024 or not, that's absolutely has a bearing on SOS. But why does the approach that the county might pick have an impact on SOS? Can you unpack that a little bit for us, Phil?
And can I just add something to that, Phil, before you answer? I think what the approach we've suggested that gives the county the flexibility to procure in a way that creates the most advantageous pricing for customers and also meets our objectives from the standpoint of providing a higher content of renewable energy. I think what we've suggested gives us the ability to be as competitive as with SOS as possible, which would result in less churn in SOS. So I think what we're proposing meets the objectives that you have, at least as I understand you're stating there. We want to make sure we don't upset the SOS apple cart, if you will. So just wanted to add that.
Okay. I'm trying to understand when the prices would be known for the CCA.
But that, to me, that suggests that when the prices are known, the commission will say that's an acceptable price or not an acceptable price. Are you suggesting that?
Well, that's not what I was thinking of. I mean, obviously, that's not how SOS prices are reviewed by the commission. The commission does look at the bill impact, but I think the majority of the evidence presented about the bids themselves have to do with the competitiveness of the procurement. But no, I was talking about, it seems if the SOS prices sort of require some knowledge about the amount of load that is put out to bid. That's I think a key element of the SOS planning process. They need to know how much load to purchase and when. And if there's, I think the SOS process has a limited way to sort of manage the, some uncertainty with that, and to the extent that it's higher or lower. But it seemed to me that having a handle on when the CCA bid price, or the ultimate price were known, would have some impact on whether or not there's the expectation that customers would opt out or remain with the CCA. And that, you're still not going to know that. Was my impression that having some certainty on the SOS price is already, there. You pretty much know after the April bid what SOS is going to be for the full year starting in June. And it's difficult to perhaps understand whether or not folks are, on a price basis, are going to opt in or out if you don't know what the CCA rates are going to be. Maybe until maybe, I don't know if we were suggesting, Dan, that like you might not know that price or have that available until you actually have to send the letter with the opt-out, which I think we were still talking is like August. But I don't know how the SOS process sort of selects how they're going to manage the procurement for SOS. If there's some of the stuff is unknown to the extent that it could be if we wait really long. I'm not. I mean, there's other folks on staff that handle that for us. So I'm not fully logged into what's going on with that. But I think that was part of the desire that we had to know more about the procurement and have some understanding as to when those prices would be set. That's entirely setting aside, the whole oversight of the price approach and the oversight of the procurement approach that I know that there's disagreement on. Lisa, did that answer your question? I mean, I think I was trying to convey the impact that sort of some foreknowledge or an expected date at which we'd understand what the CCA prices would be, and then possibly one could infer some things about that from the way the prices were established.
So Phil, if I could, so you're talking about the assumption about what percentage of customers in Montgomery County might opt out of the CCA and go back to SOS, so whether that's 10% or 15% or 20% or 70%, it could be based on the price that the CCA offers. That's what you're talking about.
That's I think that's a good piece of intel to have.
Yep. And I guess I would again emphasize that the approach that we're proposing would give the CCA the greatest ability to minimize the amount of people that would want to leave the CCA and go back to SOS, which would result in less concern about that. And any more restrictive approach, I agree, would increase that concern, and frankly would threaten the viability of a CCA. So.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with what you just said there. Okay. I'm not talking about restrict. Possibly being able to have less, to select a different approach might allow you to be more competitive with SOS. But what happens if it's not? And then, how is SOS supposed to sort of manage, a large amount of load that shifts back and forth?
Right, and I guess my question would be, what are you proposing that would prevent that situation from occurring? It sounds to me like
go ahead.
It sounds to me like the proposal would be to be more restrictive on what the CCA can do, which again I would think would make the price spread that the CCA could offer between SOS larger, which would create the exact uncertainty you're trying to avoid. So I'm just curious as to what the proposed approach that you're suggesting.
Well, I guess simple seemed to be better. So like the single procurement approach is something that's used in a number of states that have similar SOS kind of procurements as Maryland. It seemed, quite possibly that selecting a retail supplier, through some combination of an RFP that allowed you to weigh the price and the sort of renewable content of the energy served through that contract. It might be more along the lines of, and I think we're all not familiar with all of them, but more along the lines of like say what's being done in Ohio or something, where you basically just, unless you've got like some solar or storage facilities, like do you expect to be constructed within the next 18 months that'll be ready to serve, possibly for the first year or so, something like using a single procurement approach might be a good way to kind of get things started without a lot of uncertainty about how the prices would be moving around, and possibly there are folks within the retail supply or the suppliers that would be interested that would be fairly comfortable competing against an SOS rate that's procured the way ours is, such that you could simultaneously get close to SOS or maybe beat it, depending on which way the energy market's moving. That's sort of like a big unknown at this point, and that also gets you the renewable content you're looking for. But then now you have a relatively straightforward way to evaluate the procurement from was it competitive or not. And if you have SOS isn't a complete mystery for most of the time, because the procurements is stretched out over 2 years. So like at any given point in the year, you already know, you may know 100% of like the next summer or the next winter rate, but you also know 75% of the following period, summer or winter. So it's quite possible if you're doing procurement sort of during the SOS year for service that sort of lines up with the same SOS periods, it might not be so hard for a single supply approach to compete against that and give you what you're looking for. And then also maybe allow the folks who are looking at the way SOS is procured to have some confidence that there's going to be a reliable source there that is going to, likely to keep, some percent. I don't know how you would figure out like how many, if the price is exactly the same, like are people going to move at all, or is there some other feature, or will they be attracted by the green part? But if there's a half a penny difference or a penny difference, folks have probably studied this to understand when offers are competitive against SOS. But, I don't know that I'm just suggesting that there might be an opportunity here to sort of like get started in a relatively straightforward and simple approach, and then if you find it more advantageous to use something that either begins to incorporate like a fixed solar asset or a storage facility of some kind, that once you sort of got your customer base stable, then you can start attempting things that improve upon the approach without necessarily creating incentives to shift away from SOS or back to SOS in a way that's less certain.
So, we discussed in the PIP work group. I know there were many, not all of the participants in this participated in that, but I know there was a lot of overlap between these two groups. And one of the ideas is that, there's going to be ultimately the SOS will be procuring power for all of Prince George's County. I'll use the Pepco example, Prince George's County plus, a residual amount on the order of like 10 to 15% is what the idea was based on data from other states. So, I think we have examples of this working. the PIP workgroup process kind of hammered a lot of this out. There's nothing in it for the, no benefit to the county to have people jumping in and out. So obviously that's not our goal. So I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse, but you know, I think we have addressed this. You know, what we anticipate happening.
Yeah, and I guess I would emphasize again that the approach to regulations, which we've talked about, would not prevent us from doing a single procurement approach, but would enable us to do a multiple procurement approach if that turned out to be the most advantageous. So we can all paint a vision of how it might work, but we want to have the flexibility to go with the option that benefits the CCA and does as little harm to SOS as possible. So again, I think we're sort of rehashing old ground here repeatedly.
I think we're trying to look for, you know, some compromise. I think how we started it. So I think maybe
Yeah,
we can talk about stuff again.
Right, and I think just so Judge Grace asked, you know, whether we had positions on that, and I think we can provide it in a written document, you know, what we feel like is sort of the line in the sand we can't cross, and that's you know, the position we've been consistent about, that oversight of the commission on the procurement activity of the county from the standpoint of saying, yes, that procurement can go forward or it can't go forward, or that price is good or that price is not good. That's not something that the county could operate a CCA under that approach.
There's no need to provide that in writing. That's the same thing that the county has said. However, that's not what the question was. The question was, could you envision some middle ground? Could you envision something where the commission could take a look at procurements after the fact and say, hey, we know that you're doing ongoing procurements, but for the next one, we feel like this one maybe wasn't, I don't know, competitive enough for this reason. And can you like take that into account for the next time, or any sort of movement whatsoever? But we've not achieved that. So there's no need to put anything in writing because the county's position hasn't changed. Did you have any more questions, Phil?
Not on that. I think we're still trying to figure out how we evaluate the aggregation plan, the way the county is sort of describing what they would file, and so without, I think we have a general idea how we would evaluate, you know, procurements in a manner that's consistent with some other things we've done. But I think the thing in our mind is trying to understand, you know, if we were to make a recommendation on the aggregation plan, we were trying to sort of make sure we knew what was going to be in it and the types of information that we would have available to make the recommendation. And at this point, it seems like we will not know that as part of this process, and that's where, you know, it makes it sort of difficult to predict how the evaluation would result. Like, what kind of recommendation, what would be the conditions for approval versus not, and you know, that sort of thing. At this point, that's not like fully resolved for us. And, a lot has to do with it because, you know, we still have to figure out how to evaluate it, and make sure we understand what the impact is going to be on SOS and on, you know, on this process as well.
So I think it was the last meeting, but it may have been before that, I shared the regs that were proposed by staff and those that were proposed by the county. And at this point, for what is to be included in the plan. And, you know, the county is not sharing, not for the purposes of regs, but just for the purposes of the work group, what their ideas of how they're going to approach things are. And they're probably, none of us are probably going to get that information until the plan has to be filed. So the county is going to have to deal with, you know, staff's request for postponements or continuances and data requests and the delay that's going to come from that at that time, if the commission, you know, depending on what the commission does with the 2 sets of regs that we send to them on, even just on that one issue, what will be included in the plan. But, you know, it's a waste of our time for staff to continue to ask for information, for the county to continue to say they want to keep their options open. That's a waste of this work group's time. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to go forward with regulations. We have the ones that the county has already written. We'll include those in the report. Homework for our next meeting for the county. Please listen up and take notes. I'm going to need you to take a look at the regulations that have been proposed by staff. And if there are any other regulations that the county wants to put before the commission, we're going to need those on the same subjects that staff has proposed regs. If the county is proposing any extra regs or alternative regs, go ahead and get those to us by the next meeting. I am not going to include in the report anything that's given to this work group at a late date where members of the work group have not had time to consider alternatives that are being presented. So from this point going forward, we're going to have some strict deadlines. And if those deadlines are not met, then the alternatives will not be considered in the report. What they will be, you'll have the opportunity to send those to the commission otherwise with your comments. So I would ask the county to take a look at all of the regulations that have been, well, first of all, the county needs to take a look at all the regulations that have been proposed by staff, the strawman regulations, and make sure that you have submitted whatever alternative regs you want at this point. Staff, your homework for the next meeting. Go ahead and compile the regulations that you have written so far. And you've already considered, we've already talked about it in these meetings, and you've considered the comments of the other parties. Please incorporate those into those regulations, and then send a mailing out with those regulations compiled. So that's one thing. 2, staff, please let us know, go back to that, what Phil was talking about earlier, go back to that document, and I've been trying to pull it up and I can't find it, with the regulations that still need to be written. Please let us know what those are, because we're going to need to take a look at that sooner than later. Phil was right earlier when he said the end of the year gets very busy. So we're going to do some heavy lifting for the next few weeks to try to keep this on schedule. We may not be able to get it to the commission by January, especially not since we're doing more than one set of regs. So, but we're going to try. So from staff, I'm looking for a list of what regulations need to be done next, the remaining regulations that need to be done. And I'm looking for a master list of regs that we've already talked about ad nauseum in these meetings. A copy of that with incorporating the comments and what the staff is proposing to send to the commission. So we can go ahead with that. Does any party have any asks? Go ahead, Lori.
Just a clarification, Judge Grace. What you're asking staff to do is compile a single document of each section of regulations that have been written, incorporating the comments that have been discussed so far? Or are you asking them to give a list of the sections that have been written? I would really appreciate a single consolidated document inclusive of all the germane regulations that have been written.
Yes, that's what I'm asking for.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Thanks. So we've responded with comments on every section, every straw man so far. I think there's at least one section that we've actually gone ahead and written up alternative regulations in full.
I have 2.
Sorry?
I have 2, but
Sorry,
maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, no, you may be right. That's not something that I reviewed for this meeting. My one ask would be that we have a chance to see, staff's compiled list and then respond to those with alternatives. So, depending on, I understand it's going to take staff. I'm not trying to push staff, but I understand it's going to take staff a while to put these together with everybody's comments so far. It may be that our comments are sufficient in some areas to sort of show sort of alternative 1 or alternative 2 for a particular subsection. So
At least what staff's
I'm-
doing is staff's already sent out a straw man. And
Right.
they're gonna add to the straw. Some of Montgomery County's comments, taking a look at, I need you to go back and take a look at your comments, because some of the comments, they require a different set of regs. You can't have an either or in the set of regs that you're sending to, that staff is sending to the commission. So if what you're asking for is, opposite of what's in the regs, then a comment's not going to suffice. So yes, you're absolutely going to be able to have an opportunity to respond to what staff's going to send out, but you need to go ahead and start looking at what we've done so far now, because there's not going to be a lot of time for Montgomery County to submit alternative regs, because we're not going to get them in December and send them to the commission in January. So yes, you will have an opportunity to respond to staff, but you need to start working on it now.
We will absolutely start working on it. We continue to work on it, but I just wanted to make sure that, without seeing staffs, it would be very difficult for us to make sure we had a complete list of alternative regs, if that's what we needed, basically concurrent with that. So I appreciate the ability to respond.
So the regs that Montgomery County has, the strawmans that Montgomery County has, strawmen has circulated so far, need to go ahead and finalize those and send them out. You have comments from everyone as well. So you need to finalize what regs you're asking the commission to consider and go ahead and send those out. That and staff's finalization of the regs that have been sent out in strawman and commented and discussed, they should go out to everyone by close of business on October the 19th. That's next Wednesday. It's a week and a day from today.
So
In
what is the
addition-
other section that you have from us, just so I make sure that my notes are complete? I know the
You know what?
aggregation plan.
You know what, Lisa, we're going to be ending the meeting fairly early today. So there's going to be plenty of time that was reserved for this meeting where you all can work on those regs. I have so many documents. I'm just not, while we're having this meeting right now, able to pull them up. But if I find them, I'll send them to you after this meeting.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Stan.
Thanks, Judge Race. Just a clarification. So essentially what you're asking us to do is by next Wednesday to have the regulations that Montgomery County would propose to the commission?
On the subject matters that we have already talked about. Staff is gonna have to send out, staff has already sent out, but I can't put my finger on it, a list of all the regs that we need based on, I think it was from Drew. Anyway, based on similar regs for other things. And there are some of the regs are on that list that we haven't taken care of yet. So there are more regs to be written, but as far as the regs that we've done for now, Montgomery County needs to take a look at the straw men that they have sent out, incorporate whatever comments they accept, and send out what version they want to go to the commission as Montgomery County's proposal on those items.
Right. So you want us to have regulations that the county would propose for each subject we've already discussed?
If they're necessary, if the county is in agreement with the other regulations, then they're not necessary. But the county has some very, very fundamental disagreements with staff.
Yeah.
And for certain regs, like let's use as an example, the regs for what has to go in the plan. Montgomery County didn't agree with the specific list of things that staff wanted to go into the plan. Montgomery County wanted to keep, in Montgomery County's version, it's they're very broad regs, straight statements about what should go in the plan. Montgomery County wants to decide later on what should go in the plan. That's great. So there wasn't a chance on those types of regulations for us to have one set of regulations to go to the commission where staff can accept your comments and make some changes and verbiage changes and other things. But there are some regulations where we were able to come to agreement. You know, where, for instance, what would be included in notices. There were some places where we were able to come to agreement, and on those I would expect staff to make those changes, and then Montgomery County wouldn't need any alternative regs.
Right, since you're asking us to do this by next Wednesday, I don't know when staff would get back with incorporating comments and things. So essentially,
We've already discussed this. If you need to go back and look at the previous Zoom meetings, you're welcome to do so. But we've already gone over and over and over the regs that have been written. Staff, Phil, can you, since we're going to be ending this meeting early today and you'll have the afternoon, can staff send me your proposal for the schedule through January?
Yeah.
For what other regs need to be completed by the end of the day today, so that I can send that out to folks if I agree.
Yep. I think we sent out a list with all the regs that, like, it was sections like I think it went all the way out to section 20. So I'm looking at that chart from the last time where we've highlighted we worked on non-residential protection, data privacy, and uncollected cost recovery last meeting. So I need to take this, update it, clarify what's not yet done. And then hopefully folks can see the sections that we've got. So I can send that out, try and clean that up and send that to you. And then also propose sort of a rough schedule for, you know, getting the work done in that time frame. And I'll set it for like middle of January. And if it turns out we need more, maybe you can think about where you think it's appropriate to extend that. It will be just pretty aggressive to try and get that done. But I think we should be able to identify the documents. I think what we've done with these is each section is a single document right now. So if I don't know if this helps folks, I might just leave them all as individual documents, like labeled by the section they are. So like 20XX01 general and 20XX01, you know, or 20XX02, which is reserved. Those will probably be in one document, but you know, the application process is 20XX11. That'll be one document.
That's fine. That's how we normally send it in anyway.
Right. So I think should be able to identify like which of the sections we've got, and then we will clean up. And as we worked on these, I think we incorporated notes on what everybody said in them. So we'll just take each of the sections we've got. There's probably like 5 or 6 sections that are already drafted. And we'll get those cleaned up and send them out by next week. And then we will know which of the sections we have yet undrafted. And the only thing that might be a little uncertain yet is we do know there are some sections within like one that need to be moved to another one. So we'll try to note those. And, there still will be some, you know, not changing words so much, just reorganizing where they go, make sure they're sorted properly. So yeah, I can send you that and like a schedule that folks can have by today. And then next week we'll take the cleaned up sections and then modify this list of the regs again to try to project, you know, what we're going to do next and go from there.
All right, thank you. Stan, go ahead.
thank you. Phil, could you send out that document that you referred to right away, the one with the 20XX, so on now,
Yeah.
since people seem to be having trouble putting their fingers on, that would help us.
I think Peter would have sent that out probably night before, day before last meeting, but I'll make sure I have the right version of it, because there are, seems like when you work on stuff, there's different versions. So I'll send that one out and make sure it's the right one. But yeah, that'll give you, there's 20, I think there's 20 sections.
Yeah, you could do, thank you. You could do that today.
Yeah, I'll go find that email now and forward it back out so that you'll have the one we sent, which is, I think what I'm looking at right now, but I'll make sure that it is.
Thank you. That'd be very helpful. Appreciate it.
It's not up to date because it'll still have the yellow as the ones we worked on 2 weeks ago is what we were going to work on. But
Sure, understood.
yeah,
Yep.
the one from last time, basically.
Does anyone else have any business that needs to be taken care of at this meeting? Go ahead, Jim.
Morning, everybody. Jim McGee, representing Prince George's County. I just couldn't find the schedule of the next meeting. When's the next meeting going to be held?
The next meeting is 2 weeks from today at 10 o'clock. Let's see, what's today? The 11th. So it's the 25th at 10 o'clock.
25th. So Empower Maryland hearing is that same time as well? I don't know if other people have conflicts or not, or if that's known and we just plow through, but I just wanted to raise that.
Folks, is anybody, are folks going to be able to be here for that October the 25th meeting?
We'll have somebody. Staff will.
Yeah, Montgomery County's fine.
Okay.
McEdison's good.
Thank you. All right, well, we have a lot of work to do to try to get these to the commission in January or February. So I hope everyone uses the afternoon to go ahead and start working on finalizing regs and having their position to go forward to the commission when we send them the report. Use your time wisely. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Goodbye.